Elizabeth, the unpredictable Queen of England, was in high good humour as she stood one morning preening herself like a peacock in front of a full-length mirror. Some bad news had delighted her. The King of Spain had sent troops into Ireland to rouse rebellion in the only spot outside of England that belonged to her. Here was the excuse she needed to use against the Spanish ambassador, excuse enough to get her in touch secretly with her little pirate. She had already sent a letter asking him to come and bring a sample of his labors. The prospect elated her. More gold, more jewels, more pearls, all to hang about her neck. The glittering image in the mirror also excited her, since she saw only what she wished to see. Not an aging woman in a red wig with skin plastered chalk white, cheeks and eyebrows painted on. What she saw was a woman forever young and beautiful, with gorgeous red hair, perfect height and figure, a brilliant, fascinating creature made even more sparkling and irresistible by this happy turn of events. Whirling about in her wide stiff skirt, she faced a handsome gentleman, whom she called Robert, and who sat idly toying with a chessman awaiting her next move. This was the Earl of Leicester, a middle-aged man, still dark and handsome, but no longer slim as in days long past, when Elizabeth's hair had been genuinely red, and his own not yet white. In 1558, when she became queen, she had made him her intimate friend and favorite courtier. Both were then 25. Now they were 22 years older, and Leicester, while still devoted to his spirited royal mistress, was a shade weary from giving her constant flattery and adjusting to her unpredictable moods. Leicester, as well as the Queen, had shared in the expense of Drake's adventurous voyage, and now stood to share handsomely in the profits. They would have seen a sample sooner had Leicester had his way. Why worry about offending the King of Spain? War was inevitable. Why not face the fact? Elizabeth refused to consider it. The last thing she wanted was war with Spain. She could not afford it. England was a poor, small country compared to Spain. The only other land she had was Ireland. And what good was that? It was always in rebellion. Philip II, King of Spain, was the richest, most powerful monarch in Europe. Elizabeth was afraid of him. She knew that his intentions were to add England to the vast empire over which he ruled. Elizabeth knew Philip well. He had once been married to her half-sister Mary, when Bloody Mary had been queen. After Mary had died, Philip had planned to secure England by marrying the new queen, Elizabeth. But she had scorned his proposal. 20 years had passed, but Philip II still had his eye on England. Elizabeth knew it, and she did not intend to antagonize him. Not openly, that is. Therefore she had acted properly shocked when the Spanish ambassador had protested against Drake. She had agreed that if he deserved it, Drake should indeed be punished. She had even controlled her desire to see the treasure until the Spanish troops had landed in Ireland, and she too had something to complain of. As for Mr. Drake, no sooner had he received his belated letter than he was up and away and on the road to London, with a train of pack horses bearing such a load of gold, silver, and precious jewels as had never passed the dusty highway before. Half of the ballast of the Golden Hind was there. Elizabeth's eyes shone when she saw it. She laughed aloud in her hearty way and gave him a friendly poke with her elbow, a nudge in the ribs to let the little pirate see that she, personally, was all for him. despite her own High Treasurer's contrary opinion. Lord Burghley, sober, cautious 60-year-old High Treasurer of England, held firmly to his honest opinion that all of the stolen booty should be returned to Spain. It made Elizabeth fairly spit with annoyance. Yet she kept up her pretense of having the Spanish claim investigated until spring. Then she gave up pretending and sent for Drake to come again from Plymouth, this time openly, by sea, and in his famous ship. Soon the Golden Hind, the old weather-beaten vessel that had sailed round the world, was in the Thames River, anchored at Deptford, just below London. Crowds coming out from London went wild at the sight of it. Some even proposed to have it hoisted up to the top of St. Paul's Cathedral, to stand in the place of the old steeple broken off in a storm. Everyone wanted to see Francis Drake, the great seaman, the hero of the hour. Crowds trailed him in the streets. Ballads and songs were written in his honor. Through it all he strutted and boasted in a manner quite distasteful to Burghley and certain other members of the court. But his high spirits were so infectious, his self-confidence so contagious, that though the King of Spain demanded his head, the Queen of England decided to honor him by raising his status from that of a commoner to that of a gentleman, in other words, by making him a knight. And so the Queen, glittering with jewels, was carried shoulder high in her canopied chair to the place where the Golden Hind lay rocking gently in the river. She stepped down and swept in dazzling splendor over the gangplank onto the deck of the famous ship. There a banquet was served, as elaborate and magnificent as those served to her hardy father, Henry VIII. Of this, in her fashion, she partook sparingly. The Queen then rose and took in her hand a golden sword. The moment had come. The short, sturdy sea captain, in elegant attire, stepped confidently forward and knelt at the Queen's feet. Plain Mr. Francis Drake, touched on the shoulder with the golden sword, he rose, Sir Francis Drake, a knight and a gentleman. And who had performed the ceremony? The Queen? No. At the last moment, unpredictable as ever, she handed the golden sword to the French ambassador. Just in case of trouble with Spain, let France share the blame. Sir Francis Drake, now shining in the Queen's favor, spent hours with her in the garden that summer, urging her to let him establish a base in the islands off the coast of Spain, swoop down from there on Spanish treasure ships, and so cripple the King of Spain and also fill her own treasury. It was a tempting proposal, but how much of such crippling would Philip II stand before declaring war? That was the question, and Elizabeth did not want war. Certainly not before she had France more definitely on her side, not until the fantastic plan she was pursuing with France that summer had developed further to her satisfaction. Meanwhile, up in Willoughby, little John Smith, growing more active every month, would soon be starting on his own first great adventure, that of learning to walk.